The views and opinions expressed on the program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the programs,
and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Satanic Temple.
This may well be Satan's most ingenious scheme for undermining the belief in the sufficiency of God's Word.
Satan is symbolic of the eternal rebel in opposition to arbitrary authority, forever defending personal sovereignty even in the face of insurmountable odds.
That's Satanism, people.
Modern
Satanism.
The consequences of Satanism are very real. The consequences are very real.
But here comes Satanism.
Satan's been around for a while, so he's got a plan.
That's Satanism, people. Satanism.
Turn them over to Satanism.
That's right, turn them over to Satan. It's for their own good, whether they like it or not. You're listening to the Modern Satanism Podcast. Good for you. I am your host, Reap, and I will be your host until the podcast's conclusion, and then I will cease to be the host until the next podcast. I am a priest with the Satanic Temple, but as you may have heard, the views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily represent those of the Satanic Temple. Been getting a lot of good feedback on the podcast lately. I'd like to thank everyone for their input. Got a couple show topics, information for some, or suggestions for show topics, I should say. And I want to thank you for that. Just keep them coming. Glad to hear from you. Glad to hear a lot of people are enjoying the podcast. And, hopefully we can keep doing good work here. Try not to let you down too much. This has been recorded on Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. Sorry I'm going to be a little late delivering that wish, but I suppose I should let you know of a guest appearance I did on a show called Trust Reason with a gentleman named Eric Herman. And that was an enjoyable conversation, and thank you to Eric for inviting me to hang with him on his radio show. You can hear Trust Reason on Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on Cox Cable Channel 37 in Fairfax, Virginia. And it's also streamed live at radiofairfax.com. And I'm not sure exactly when you'll be able to hear me on that show, but tune in on Thursday nights between 6 and 7 p.m. Eastern, and it's pretty safe to say that eventually you'll hear me on there. Good conversation. We talked a little bit about the Satanic Temple and Satanism and random topics. That often happens whenever I do a guest spot. I just got off the phone with Lucien Greaves, who was a speaker at Skepticon, which, in my opinion, is a big deal, and it went over very well, and it's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive, because Skepticon, there's some opinions roaming around at Skepticon that tend to be quite critical at times, but I guess that didn't occur on this occasion, so that's a good thing. And a lot more skeptics know about Satanism, the Satanic Temple Satanism, so that's good. And I guess P.Z. Myers bored everyone to death, and what else do we expect? So thank you, P.Z. Myers, for not changing and being, we can count on you to be a boring dick. So thanks. I guess Tom Respotnik has written something else about me, accusing me of doing some things. I'm not sure exactly what. I think he's upset because his contribution to the last podcast was less than impressive. And I don't know why he wants to take it out on me. It's not my fault he's less than impressive. He really should look at himself, try and better himself. If he's unhappy with his performance in the last podcast, he really should take steps to make himself a better person and not take it out on others. So Tom, please, stop trying to what's the word I'm looking for? It's not my fault. You're the way you are, Tom. Okay, please don't blame me. Might have a talk with your dad about that. Just a friendly suggestion. On this podcast, you'll be hearing about the postman is satanic, and the Pope is satanic. And what else is satanic? I don't know what else is satanic, but I've been talking about discussing evil and the concept of evil and how there is no such thing as evil, really. I mean, it's a very complicated subject, but I decided to take it on with a couple guys that I do another podcast with, named Brian and Terry, and so the majority of this show is going to be that conversation, which went off on a couple of unplanned discussions. But I think as a whole, the conversation will make you think. If it doesn't make you think, then it will confuse you greatly. So either one way or the other, you'll get something out of it. I hope. And is there anything else I wanted to talk about? I don't think so. I think that's it. But as usual, if I do think of anything as the podcast goes along, I'll be sure and cut it in and edit it into the podcast. You'll never know the difference, trust me.
You are listening to the Modern Satanism podcast with your host, Reap.
I guess I'm going to have to get a hold of Monster Energy Drinks and see if they want to sponsor the podcast now, according to this lady. Listen.
Look at your M closely. There's a gap right here in the letter M. It's never connected. So you go into Hebrew. The letter Vav is also the number 6. Short top, long tail. Short top, long tail. You could have here in Hebrew 666 on the can. But my interest is the word monster. What do you see in the O? There's a cross.
Okay.
What has Christ got to do with an energy drink, let alone the name Monster? So I thought, well, maybe this is a Christian company then. VFC at the bottom of the can. Do you know what that stands for? That's the F word. Big can. In fact, they write it on the side of the can, so I know that's the F word.
Okay.
Now, do you know what a MILF is?
Yes.
That's on the box. MILFs, dig it, and you will too. This is not a Christian company at all. So why would they have put a cross on the can? Here is the message. Antichrist. 666 in Hebrew. And then the Bible talks about the beast in Revelation. And look at Monster's ad. This is their statement. You see these M's everywhere. Hats, t-shirts, bumper stickers. Is there another agenda here? If God can use people and product, so can Satan. And look at it this way. Even if the M was not the issue, you cannot deny that that is a cross. And what is witchcraft? When the cross goes upside down, bottoms up, and the devil laughs. Something to think about.
Wow.
This is how clever Satan is and how he gets into the Christian home and a Christian's life, and it breaks God's heart. Jesus said, my people perish for lack of knowledge.
That's awesome. I've never even seen that.
That's right. Monster Energy Drinks are of the devil. I knew it. I knew they were already. I am very happy this lady came forward to back me up in my claims that Monster Energy Drinks are from the devil. I didn't really say that. But she appears to very much believe that Monster Energy Drinks are from Satan. And how fucking crazy do you have to be to believe that shit? Don't answer that question.
It's him! Satan! Raise your hands! It's Satan! The chair!
In Gary, Indiana, whether you're a believer or not, religious experts say exorcisms are happening more and more. Pope Francis often speaks about the devil in his morning homilies, and he did so again ahead of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. This generation and many others have been led to believe that the devil is a myth, a figure, an idea, the idea of evil. But the devil exists, and we must fight against him, the Pope told faithful gathered at Mass for Mass at St. Martha's guest house where he resides. This year, the Vatican dedicated a group of of 250 priests from around the world to perform the ancient rite of casting out demons. The Vatican's chief exorcist told a Vatican newspaper that he has casted out as many as 70,000 demons. Wow. That's almost as good as McDonald's. Catholics describe exorcism as the eternal battle between good and evil and a fight for souls on earth. To them, it's a spiritual war where demons possess the living, giving them dark powers. Demons are fallen angels, evil spirits, said Sister Madeline Grace, What a name. The devil is using their physical powers in ways they never had before. Exorcism is a topic that many Catholic priests will not talk about. I wonder why. But one in Gary, Indiana, spoke to Eyewitness News, and here's what he said. Priest Mike Magna is at the center of the most documented cases of demon possession and exorcism in recent history. In April of 2012, he got a frantic call about a 9-year-old boy. His 2 siblings and his mother were tormented by demon spirits coming from their basement, also known as a crazy raccoon. This was different. It all started when they moved into that house, he said. He says behind the stairs was a portal to hell. Scary. Occasionally, they would hear growling. They were waking up with bloody noses. They should stop punching each other in the face while they sleep. All of a sudden, one of the boys got thrown into the freezer. Well, the boy's grandmother is seen in a rare police interview describing the incident. His head is doing this. His eyes are rolling around. He's talking in a crazy voice. Grandmother Rosa Campbell said, "He said on my stomach was doing this. His face was stretching, going back and forth. Grandma, stop doing acid." Indiana's Department of Child Services eventually removed the kids from the home. Probably the wisest thing that's been done so far. But the problems followed. Usually the devil doesn't show off before professional people. Magnus said, "Yeah, I'm sure. He doesn't want to get embarrassed in case he makes a mistake." But then, when he said this time the devil did. Eyewitness News obtained official records from the Department of Child Services. There are accounts during an observation in the presence of a doctor, a caseworker, and a psychologist. One of the children walked up the wall and did a flip over his grandmother. Wow. In another instance, in the doctor's office, the boy was lifted and thrown into the wall while records say nobody touched him. Yeah. The boy's mother, Latoya Amons, faced her own demons, and Magnet and his parish bishop decided it was time for the exorcism of Ammons. "I decided to test her with my crucifix," he said. "Every time I put the crucifix on her, she would convulse, but it would be a steady convulsion. If that doesn't convince you of some shit, I don't know what would. But what it convinces me of is there's a bunch of fucking crazy people around there. They need a bunch of jackets with long sleeves. They need to bring them over to that house and get them put on a bunch of people." Exorcisms. Demons. Kids doing flips over their grandmother's heads. What'll they think of next? Satan, you're a genius. But I hope you get the confidence to someday do your evil deeds in front of professionals, because that'll convince everybody. Jack-offs.
You're listening to Modern Satanism.
Welcome to you're listening to the Modern Satanism podcast, and a topic I've always wanted to bring up, or I've been talking about bringing up for the podcast, has been evil. So we're going to discuss that a little bit and for this podcast. And I've brought in a couple of, I wouldn't say experts, because none of us are going to claim to be experts. But
we're experts on evil.
What we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion about evil and the concept of evil, because of the way that evil has always kind of gone hand in hand with Satanism in the general population. I mean, generally when people think about evil or Satan, they think it's evil, and the concept is evil, and that we're out to do evil, or somehow we're equated with evil or equal to evil. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And morality, I guess, would be another part of that goes with it. And we actually had this conversation once, but we're going to have this conversation again, where we talked about the way that the Satanic Temple differs from the Church of Satan, and the way it differs from religion, in the way it defines what morals are. And I brought up the point that I think the Satanic Temple is very open in its expectations from its members as far as evil. And I think, Terry, you want to talk about the
Well, before Terry goes, can I ask a quick question?
No, you can't. Terry, you want to talk about
Damn it.
the humanism and how you think it might be kind of...
Well, I just think that based on what I've heard from your podcast and based on what I've read, that the morality promoted by the Church of the Satanic Temple is probably for people who are listening who are maybe not familiar with Satanism, most closely resembles like a secular humanist morality. But there was one point that I was interesting because you were talking about the tenets before that were written out on the website, and I think one of them was the overarching theme was like a live and let live type thing.
Yeah.
Well, but what's interesting about the difference to me, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, between like the Satanic Temple and the Church of Satan, is that the Church of Satan almost forces that to a fault. Because they don't think that because of that definition or because of that feeling that Satanists shouldn't be coming out and speaking to try to maybe have others see things their way, right?
To try and force quote unquote on people, yeah.
Whereas the Satanic Temple stays a bit truer to the spirit of having. Not necessarily a whole bunch of rules written down, but maybe just a more like science, having a way to approach things, right? And in saying that, you know what, let's be real. If the whole world wants to eventually get along as a group, we all kind of have to agree about how to approach these problems. And so, they're taking that extra step the Church of Satan is refusing to do just because of this desire to not be trying to say that this is an appropriate way to act. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to avoid that religion,
micromanaging. Is kind of
but I think that there's a lot of atheists and a lot of people in the world that agree with that. But the problem is that someone has to be right, and when you look at science and you look at how much it works. Satanists and atheists and skeptics or whatever, we do have the truth and science on our side. So
reality also, yes.
Yeah, reality. In my opinion, we have a duty, no matter what one of those groups you belong to try to at least convince people to see that side of things, to become more moderate in their belief and become more skeptical, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, do we have a responsibility? I don't know if we have a responsibility to force that on other people, but offer them the information so that they can make their own choices, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say force it. I would say...
force when necessary, I would think.
Don't you get stuck with the downfall of not forcing it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. You need to force it when necessary. There's some people that are going to refuse to allow other people to have their rights or to treat people fairly or to give them consideration.
Well, it's kind of like seatbelts. Like you want to be like, hey, wear your seatbelt. And if people don't wear their seatbelt,
I really hate seatbelt laws.
Die.
But even then, I would argue that that's not technically forcing.
No.
You want to force. You want to be like, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, we're going to set you on fire. Like that would be awesome. I guess maybe. Probably not to set them on fire. But still, you have to wear a seatbelt every time you're in a vehicle for your own safety. Because people want to be like, I don't need that, blah, blah, blah. And they want to be, arrogant about it sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, that analogy is close, but I don't know if it would be hit.
Probably not the best analogy. It was the first
but I understand what you're talking about. So. I'm talking about more about when you're affecting other people directly than wearing your seatbelt, though. I mean, wearing your seatbelt is kind of protecting you from yourself, and I'm talking about more not judging people because of the way they were born or treating people differently because of the way they were born kind of deal. You know what I mean? You don't treat people differently because their skin color is different or because their sexual preference is different or because they were born and they don't feel like they're born male and they feel like they're a female inside. You don't judge people for those kind of things. Those are things that you need to overlook and things that you should just...
Well, no, okay, so you judge them, but you shouldn't be anti them.
Well, I don't even know if you should judge them, actually.
You have well, that's the thing. Because there's a person very prominent in the atheist community that just came out as transgender.
Yeah. I don't judge him
American
by that,
Atheist. I'm like, okay, well, that's a very interesting thing that you just suddenly...
I actually judge him more by his decision to come out than I do by the fact of whatever he wants to identify by.
Okay, let's touch on that in a second. That's interesting.
I have more respect for him just based on the premise that he's brave enough to come out as the way as being different than other people, than the fact that he is different than other people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is now is it a spectacle? Is it something we should look at? Because that creates judgment as well. Because anybody that goes, "Hey, I'm Tom," and then 6 months from now they're like, "Hey, I'm Jane. I'm no longer going to be identified as Tom." You go, "Okay, that's cool. I'm fine with doing that." But there's this weird transition period where other people go, how does this work out? What do we do here now? Like, do we?
I don't think that's a judgment thing. I think that's just a problem, their own problem that they have with dealing with.
It's their own problem, but there's a lot of legality that builds around that, so people get confused.
No, there is no legality around that. That's the whole thing. That's my whole point. There should be no legality around that. There should be a person should be accepted for being a human. They're human.
You can't just get out of the courthouse and be like, hey, I'm a lady now. I used to be a guy.
But they should be able to. That's the whole point.
Yeah, absolutely. They should be able to.
That's the whole point.
But that problem is where they can't is what causes an issue and makes it all kind of weird.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be an issue. That's what I'm talking about, is that those kind of things shouldn't be issues. And that's the kind of thing that I think the Satanic Temple is strong in, that kind of belief where and it's like I said before, you don't judge people based on the way they were born or things that they don't have any power over. You know? If you choose to go out and you choose to tattoo yourself purple, then you know what? That's a little bit different. It's a little bit different. I mean, it's not maybe, I don't know. I would have a tendency, to be honest, to judge a person more on that behavior.
I mean,
far
honestly,
more.
I would hire a purple person if they just.
Well, if they chose to tattoo themselves purple, there's something going on there. To be honest,
I would interview them heavily. But if I through the interview process that they were qualified for the job, I would absolutely hire them.
Let's all stop and think about that, though, really. For a second.
Well, sometimes people do stuff to just outlash against.
Yeah, but all purple, man, that's just a bad color. At least blue.
Don't do tertiary colors. Do primaries. Do not do the secondary colors. Do primaries.
I think that the whole thing about judgment is to remember, first of all, that it's perfectly a natural human thing to judge people. Just based on what you see and your first impressions and whatnot.
It's something you unconsciously do every day.
Right. And so like, there's always this balance between don't judge and then feeling guilty when you judge.
Yeah.
I think that when you find yourself doing it, and you recognize it, then you kind of have to learn to manage your expectation for whether or not your judgment is true, right?
Yeah.
And
check yourself.
Be very willing to revise that, right?
Yeah. Check yourself.
It's completely impractical to say no one should judge anyone ever because that just won't happen. But we just need to be willing to kind of check our biases as we go, right?
Realistically, there's no way you're ever going to reach that. It's like San Francisco has this ordinance where they're trying to reach the point where no one gets run over by a car ever in a traffic accident because we've had a high amount of pedestrian homicides, deaths. And their goal is to never have anybody run over by a car and killed, which is a good goal, but realistically, accidents are going to happen. You know what I mean? It's kind of realistically, you have to be realistic.
But that's why
it's going to happen.
I think it's important when you're trying to make decisions about how you're going to think about something or how you're going to do something. You can always set your goal to be the ideal.
Yeah.
As long, because that, to me, if your goal is the ideal, even if you might never reach the ideal,
keeping in mind you won't reach it.
Striving for it, you'll always reach full potential.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you always have to keep in mind you're probably never going to reach that. And when people ask you, you have to be open to say, okay, we realize that this may not be realistic, but it's a good thing for us to shoot for.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think so. Having that bit of pragmatism or that practical the thinking behind it allows you to set realistic goals on your way to that ideal.
Yeah.
Right. So because if you're just pie in the sky, you might say, well, let's write this policy, and then you look at it on paper and you're like, no one's going to be able to follow this policy. Right.
Well, what is the realistic goal? What is that goal?
Well, I don't think you know it until you reach it.
The realistic, if you want to use the example of someone not getting hit by cars, I don't know. I'm not. It's an apt analogy, but I can't think of what's the first step. Maybe it's.
But that's the hard part is when you want to set a realistic goal, you have to decide what the realistic goal is. Because I don't think
you have to decide what the realistic goal is. I think that setting the goal of there being zero is kind of overly optimistic, obviously, and not realistic because accidents happen. Things are going to happen.
Well, that's what I'm kind of getting at, Reap, is that if you want to set a realistic goal, you have to imagine what the optimal situation is.
You can never do that because accidents are unpredictable. You can never set a realistic goal where you realistically know how many accidents are going to happen in a year's time or a month's time.
So does that make the realistic goal ultimately unachievable? Because if you
maybe it does.
If ultimate goal, ultimate, like, best thing ever is everybody is treated exactly equal. We'll settle for most people being okay, and then some people get shitted on.
But I think you risk the possibility of underestimating your potential or not reaching your potential if you set your realistic goal too low, and there's no way you can know what your realistic goal is going to be in the first place, because who knows? We might be able to go a year without anybody being run over by a car.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like say.
So that would make the realistic goal to be zero. But if you would have told somebody that it's just like baseball season. If you would have told somebody that the Giants were going to win the World Series, you know, what are the odds of that? The odds are, you know, there's odds against things. I mean, and there's odds against how many people are going to get run over by cars. There's no way you can say a realistic goal and stick to that and expect to
not piss off people.
Not piss off people, but disappoint people and make people maybe think, oh, well, this is silly now because we can't reach that realistic goal. Yeah. I don't think that's.
Here's using your baseball example. My goal is to nobody hits anything but home runs the entire year, and we win 1 billion to 0.
Yeah.
The optimistic or the setting realistic goals would be 50-50, maybe.
Yeah.
And then if you base it on that, you go, okay, well, I'm okay with not doing some of these things.
Okay, when are you okay with how many people get killed by cars?
Well, that's the thing. Is like when you say that you're okay with this many people, like say if you're working with equality or something like that, like I don't think it can translate completely. Like, you know, like, well, I'm okay with these certain people not getting all these rights because they got some of them.
We're kind of getting stuck in a chase your tail situation. I think
that you're using a bit of a logical fallacy here.
Okay, maybe
you're saying that by setting a realistic goal that you're tacitly endorsing
a certain amount of okayness.
The opposite of that, right? Which is the inequality, which I think is not true, and is actually an argument we hear very often from some.
Well, that could be a logical fallacy. But at what point in time do we go? We acknowledge that is actual a fact.
We don't. We keep fighting, even if it's one instance where we say, okay, everybody needs to be treated equally, and there's one instance that we find that someone's not being treated equally, we don't go, okay, we hit pretty close to our goal, we're missed by one. We still address that one and do what we can to address it, and we keep doing that.
I agree.
And we keep on raising our bar as far as we can, and realistically knowing that once in a while, by chance, no one's going to be treated nobody's going to be treated wrongly. But when someone does get treated wrongly, we don't go, oh, okay, well, it's just that one, so, you know, it's okay. We still address it, and that's the way we fight that fight every day. I mean, all three of us do. We fight that fight every day. So asking...
Actually, I'm happy that both of you said that, because I agree that there's never a win. There's not a win scenario in this.
Yeah, I mean, even if you do reach your goal, it's still an ongoing fight, because we're talking about social issues, which are a really, really, really tricky thing because of all the different possibilities
that comes along with it.
I got a couple analogies in my mind. Can I just say these?
Yeah, please.
So on the issue of, say, the social issue, I thought of a really good thing. So say back when, African Americans were, they were kept as slaves, right? So there were obviously people in the U.S. that were for equal rights and wanted to make that change. And so are they going to have someone who's a slave go from having no rights basically to having all the rights of all the white people in the United States overnight? No. What's the first realistic step that you take that will help? Well, then you abolish slavery. You get that's the logical first step, right?
That's not even the logical first step. The first step is that certain slaves get certain privileges.
Okay, well...
And then they can influence...
No, I think the first step would be to abolish slavery if you're going to make everybody...
Well, no, I'm saying, like, the steps that went to abolishing slavery, there were steps before that where they started giving preferential treatment to people. They started...
Yeah, but they should have abolished slavery first.
But
then you get to equal rights.
Okay, but let me further clarify. I'm thinking about from the point of view of the people who are, like, the government or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and I guess... and to me, like, yes, I know, I know it's much more nuanced, but it's just for the sake of analogy. So if you look at the accidents or people not getting hit by cars, you could look at and say the same thing. Okay, well, how are we enforcing our laws? Maybe we're ticketing people in cars. Maybe we need to start more strictly ticketing people who jaywalk. right?
Yeah.
That could be a logical next step to stop people from getting hurt, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Anyway.
Keep going.
No, well, I was just trying to illustrate the point that, there are practical goals that you can set to kind
Small
of strive
steps, you mean.
towards the ideal that don't, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You know what I mean?
Here's an odd question to that end. Instead of ticketing people that jaywalk, how about we ticket people that don't teach that in school, how to drive properly and stop and pedestrian crossing?
Because driving properly isn't the only problem. I mean, that's a good possibility, but more likely, it's more likely that people are jaywalking.
Let's try to go closer to a source than trying to fix the outcome. Let's go closer to the source of the problem.
Well, I think you get to that point, but I think first of all you target what is probably the most common problem or common cause, which would be first of all you'd be ticketing drivers probably. I don't know why, or you could ticket jaywalkers. Either one I think would be equally closer to the source of the problem. Is what Terry's point is. Is that your point, Terry?
My point is that it's a multifaceted problem, right? That it isn't right to put the blame entirely on the driver. It isn't right to put the blame entirely on the pedestrian. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like everyone has an equal part to play, right? Well, maybe not equal. Like I guess it would depend on the situation. But
there's no way to know what. I mean, unless you were sitting there watching every incident or studying every incident, you wouldn't know what was.
But I think that you'd have to be very obtuse to say that a pedestrian has absolutely no responsibility for their own safety when they're walking, right? So I mean,
but, I'm still in the mindset of an ounce of medicine is worth a pound of cure. Like if you can nip the problem before the problem happens.
Oh yeah, prevention.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but what I'm saying, if you wanted an immediate cure for it, if you wanted something would happen faster, you would start targeting people who are jaywalking at the current time rather than. Yeah, I mean, teaching people not to do that is a good thing, but you've still got these people out here who haven't been taught, and you're never going to be able to teach them in time. And you start targeting people that are jaywalking, then you have there's a higher possibility you're going to stop deaths if you're actively out there in the community ticketing people who jaywalk, because people are going to stop jaywalking. They're going to go, oh shit, you get a ticket if you jaywalk.
Yeah, it's a combination, right? Stiffer regulation.
Let's just take everybody's cars. Fuck them.
Yeah, Google cars will save us from all this if we get Google to get on. We've already talked about that.
We're just going to sit back and wait for robot cars, and then everybody can walk wherever the fuck they want to.
Let's get back on the topic. Let's get back on the topic of evil.
Sorry.
Of evil. I mean, I know that morality is something that goes along with it, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be talking about it, but I'm going to get back to the evil topic and what people think is evil. And I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were discussing evil is a couple different things, a couple different aspects to evil that we need to consider. We need to consider
Can I flat out say evil doesn't exist, neither does good?
No, we can say that flat out, except we've got the problem where evil does exist, and it does exist on a personal level. It's almost like religion.
What level of evil are we talking about?
We're talking about a personal level of evil, what you think is wrong, what you think is evil. Brian, is there anything that you would describe as evil or no?
Yes, but it's not intrinsically evil.
And I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying. There are two different aspects.
That's what Reep just said. It's a personal thing.
Yeah, there are things that I could judge in my head as, because it's always a slight against myself.
And that's what we need to make that point very strongly. And that's why none of us are experts on this, to be clear. We are not telling you what we have no inclination, no goal of telling people what's wrong and what's right and what's evil and what's not evil. That's not the goal of this conversation. This goal of this conversation is to discuss the concept of evil and the way it needs to be perceived by people, or the way people should perceive it, or maybe give them a new way of perceiving it, because there are, like I just tried to describe it, I guess I didn't do that well. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. There's a way to look at it from a perspective of the universe as a whole, the way that everything that we know exists, not just on the earth, but in the universe, and the way we personally, day to day, deal with the concept. It's two different things. And I don't know if there's another way of approaching it. I'm not sure what it is, or I haven't thought it through enough. I don't know if you guys have any ideas on that. There's another way of...
I have a sentence, maybe.
Yeah?
The universe... There is no good and evil. There is no right or wrong. There's just things that happen.
Yes, I know that. I just described that. Your sentence is up.
Well, I guess I'll just stop then.
Terry?
I was going to say because...
Go ahead.
Terry. I was going to say Terry can say the rest of it.
I want to hear the last part of what Brian's going to say.
Go ahead.
I think he's going to say basically the same thing I'm going to say. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, then you go ahead. No, we decide good and evil, or right or wrong,
and that's
based
kind
on
of
a
point.
social construct that we
Kind of
decide what's right or wrong, and that's what we do. We just do that. We decide that that's good or that's right or wrong as things that can decide that as a group.
That's right. Good. I would say good and evil do not exist outside a human mind, right? So even though...
Well, they don't have a direction. There's no direction to an event happening. It has no positive or negative thing happening after that.
Because there is no purpose, there is no intention. There is no intention.
You guys are getting confused, though, kind of.
It's the idea of...
the only time it matters is when it fucks with somebody else.
Well, it's personal. It's
one other observer is involved, they go, that fucks with me or that helps me. The second any third party goes, that helps me or hurts me, that's when it becomes good and or evil in a human mindset. Is once you add a third party that says this affects me somehow.
Not necessarily a third party, even between two people.
Well, just a party, just another party.
If you still were one perspective, then you've muddled it up. Because, like I said, it's a personal concept. It's a personal concept of what you think is evil.
The second something else can go, hey, that bothers me.
Exactly, the secondary.
Yeah, so secondary,
opinion.
whatever. Yeah. I was thinking of something, watching an interaction. But yes, a secondary, the second it interacts with anything, and that thing goes...
That conflicts
that
or disputes what your concept is, then you've got a problem. That's where the problem comes in.
Yeah,
I think
that it helps or hurts.
What we really have to be careful of, though, when we discuss this being a personal subjective issue, is that we don't descend into moral relativism, because
that's a trick.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by moral relativism?
Yes.
Meaning that if now something that is inherently good or bad or whatever, if you say that it's 100% subjective, that means that you have no basis on which to judge, say, a culture who has a religion that believes that this just the old Sam Harris example. They have a book that tells them every third walks in darkness, so they pluck the eyes out of every third child that's born. If you believe in moral relativism or like purely moral subjectivity, you have no frame from which to criticize that, right? So even though as atheists or as Satanists, we don't have a moral code given to us from on high, we still can have an objective morality, objective...
Oh, okay. So you're going with the absolute suffering versus absolute happiness.
You can't even do that. You can't even do that. You can't even go there. You can't even...
Well, I'm just asking if that's where he's going with that. It was like, taking eyes away from people is suffering for them. Even if they don't know it's suffering, it's still kind of suffering because it hurts a little bit. Even if it causes a problem for a second.
There's a lot of things that hurt that are good for you.
Yeah, but okay, never mind. Then Terry,
so you can't.
Well, I'm just going on with Sam Harris. Like he was talking about Sam Harris, I was like, okay, so you have like this bar of like absolute happiness versus absolute bullshit suffering. Everything sucks.
And even things that make you happy are not necessarily good for you either.
Happy is good versus anything.
That's not true though, because even things that make people happy are not necessarily good for them.
Right. Well, and I think. That's how, and you are right. I mean, I am basically alluding to Sam's argument about the moral landscape or whatever, but I think that where Sam is often misunderstood is that he says that I think that we can't say that one person's road to happiness. Well, actually, no, we can say I think that most non-psychopaths can agree that hurting children is not a path to the well-being of anybody, be it the person that's hurting them. If they're a psychopath, then...
I have a question.
Sure.
That might break all of this. Can we scientifically find what equals happiness?
No, you can't.
Like right now,
No,
chemically,
no,
like
you
in your brain.
No,
can
you
we
can't.
find what's
No.
better
No.
or worse?
No, you can't.
I thought we could figure out, these chemicals equals better, and these chemicals equals bad.
No, you cannot do that because of the variety of different perceptions people have of reality.
You can obviously find which chemicals correspond to which feelings, but you can't objectively define what's good and what's bad.
And you can find something that applies to the majority of people.
Yeah, I was
which is where our trick is. That's the trick.
Made you happy, and other things made you sad.
That's the tripping point right there. That's the trick, is because as society we've had to force this good. We've had to bring this good and evil concept into play because we need to survive as a species. That's the reason why we're here, is to procreate and to survive. I mean, we are evolved to survive and continue existing. And the things that help the tribe.
Ultimately, we're built to just make more of ourselves.
Yeah, well, if we weren't built just not to make more of ourselves, but to help those selves to exist, continue to exist so that they can keep on making more of ourselves, there's more to it than just having sex. The fucking and having babies is not one. It's only one aspect of our evolution.
Well, I think
we need
that's
to
the
make sure
base.
that people can
I think
continue
that's the
to
base.
live a healthy enough life so that they can fuck and have more babies. Because it's not something we're born to do right out of the gate. So we have to make sure that those people can continue to survive long enough to continue to do that, and we have to survive for a little bit of time to be able. Because women can't just have babies when they're born. You know what I mean?
What?
Okay, you can't have sex with a baby and have another baby. Women are not physically able to do that.
Yeah.
Really?
Really, you cannot just. A baby does not get knocked up. How often does a baby get knocked up?
I don't know. I've watched Jerry Springer.
Yeah, well, Jerry Springer's full of shit.
It's not just about that, too. It's also about the fact that, even if that were possible in some freak occurrence, it just because it happens in a freak occurrence doesn't mean that it's the way which nature's going to drive that, right?
Yeah.
Like the way it worked out, nature selected for people when they would start having kids is when they reach a certain level of maturity and they're going to be able to take care of them. You know what I mean?
If we all lived to be 20, if we all only lived 24 hours and then we died, our society would be a much different fucking place, and our morality would be much different than it is right now.
I was actually, when Terry was talking, I was going to ask that, what if we would reach sexual maturity? Like, say, some evolutionary step happened, and then suddenly we're sexually mature at 13.
Yeah.
Would our society allow that to happen?
Yes, it would.
To where we're at now.
Yeah, it would have to.
Where we're at right now.
It would have to. Well, right now, I can't say. I can't say right now how people would deal with it. You don't. That's the thing about society and societal rules and our morality as a society and the way we form our social structure is you cannot judge, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many problems, is you can't tell how people are going to react to things or their response to things.
Here's an interesting scenario. What if everybody, every girl and guy was sexually mature perfectly, that's when they should fuck at 13, but they're not mentally or socially mature until they're 19?
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter because I think our physical demands are what overtake our emotional demands.
And also,
but how would our cultural?
I don't know. That's a point. That's a question that's very interesting, but it's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about what ifs. I want to talk about what's going on now.
Yeah, we can talk about that some other time. I just think that's a really interesting question.
It is an interesting subject to get into, but
so all the listeners you guys can go fuck off and talk about that.
Just stay tuned, and we'll talk about it another time.
Anyway, back to the topic. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for detracting.
Okay, Terry, go ahead, Terry.
I think that one of the most interesting parts of this debate is talking about how if good and evil don't objectively exist, which I think we all three agree on that. Like good and evil don't float around. They don't float around in the universe somewhere.
Exactly. Right? The universe doesn't have a set of edicts that we have to go by.
Right.
You mean you didn't get your paper? I got my paper when I was.
Yeah, exactly. There's no rules.
It was just like, hey, Brian, don't do this.
Yeah,
was it like the sorting hat from Harry Potter?
The sorting hat from Harry Potter? Absolutely, exactly like that.
Yeah.
I went to a meeting, they were like, you're a Gryffindor.
If only it was that easy.
Oh, I would have thought that it was said passive-aggressive on you, sorry. Anyway.
No, it just said don't tell penis.
Thank you.
Anyway, so what I think is the most interesting consequence of the fact there's no good and evil, and the fact that like we don't believe in gods, obviously, as Satanists or atheists, that we are obviously purely products of our genes and our circumstance, right? Yeah. So if that's true, is it fair for us to we should punish people who do things that are out of line in terms of like, you know, not fitting in our
socially unacceptable,
which I think is overall a humanistic morality or
you keep using that humanistic thing. You're forcing that on me, I feel like.
No. Let's say Satanistic. Is that better? Because I think they're pretty much the exact same thing. But if that's true, then I think that it's right to condemn their behavior and it's right to punish.
And we must do that, I think. Yeah.
We must do that, but we also must focus on rehabilitation, and we must also focus on compassion for all people, no matter what they do, because if we acknowledge that there is no good and evil, that we are basically fueled by our genes and our environment only, then is it right to outright condemn someone as being an evil person just because, say, they were born a psychopath?
Is it right? Is it right to punish someone because they do things outside the societal exceptions? Is it right to punish them?
The right to punish and right to condemn are completely different things.
I'm not debating that at all. I'm asking you a question straight out, whether it's right to punish people because they do things that are outside of socially accepted behaviors.
Yes, I think
now, is it right to punish them because they were born that way and because their brain just happens to be wired to behave the way they have behaved?
It's right to punish them, but it's wrong to condemn them it's wrong to not it's wrong to not try to help them. Right?
I would agree with that statement right there. I think that's probably the thing I can agree with.
That's what I was trying to get that statement out. And that it's right to punish them. It needs to be done, but it is absolutely morally abhorrent to not try to help them. Right? Because the fact of the matter is, all three of us on this call tonight have probably definitely thought about doing things, or if not actually done things that many people would consider morally wrong.
Only on Thursdays.
I know multiple things that people would consider morally wrong, but I'm not greatly disturbed by those because they don't reach my level of moral, my same level. You know what I mean? Of being morally wrong. I feel justified in the behavior that I've engaged in, and there are several things that I would, if I had to do over again, I would do over again differently. But I would say I've kept that pretty limited.
And I would say I've kept that pretty limited too.
Just a disclaimer for myself.
Right. But at the same time,
just a question. We are trying to objectively choose right or wrong. What is an objective punishment?
That's a tricky question.
Yeah, like, he stole a sandwich.
I think I know.
What's the objective way to punish?
And that's a whole other subject almost.
Like, I'm going to take a sandwich away from you? Like
what about when you take someone's life and the time? I mean, take someone's life when they're 75 versus when they're 15.
Yeah, like what is the actual objective?
Is there the same value to life when you're 75 as when you're 15?
The objective, the first question you ask is, why did they steal a sandwich? Is it because...
the first question I asked is, what is an objective?
No, he says the first question you ask, not the first question you asked.
The first question you ask is, why did he steal a sandwich? If he comes from... supposedly, when you look into his background, he comes from a healthy home, a happy home, supportive.
Where he knows better.
Involved. What?
Where he knows better.
Where he knows better, all that.
And he's behaved in ways that show that he knows better, and he's actually engaging in behavior which he can avoid doing. It's not something he can't avoid. Right.
That becomes a class issue almost at times.
Well, I don't want to get into class issue. I want to get into whether that person has behaved in ways that show that he knows right from wrong before that point.
No. So you're absolutely wrong there, Brian. Loving and supportive family situations or home situations are not dependent on class. A rich family can be just as abusive or more abusive as a poor family, right? Like, that speaks to character of the people.
They're both. It's totally open to.
Okay, that's fine. I might have misspoke when I said class. I meant more like
You're talking environmental influence.
Like quality of
life,
environment,
or upbringing, or
class
whatever.
environment.
Yeah.
What he's been taught before, what they've been taught before, what they've been taught, and what they've accepted, and it's not only what they've been taught, but how they've accepted those lessons, and whether they've demonstrated behavior before that shows that they understand those lessons and understand what's good and what's bad, or understand what's I don't want to say what's good and bad, what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. And when you behave in ways that are contrary to ways that before you've demonstrated you are well aware of, whether those are accepted or not, and you've demonstrated that you can behave in ways that are accepted by society and been okay, and then all of a sudden you decide that you're going to go against those accepted behaviors and purposely harm or purposely do wrong, I think that dictates what type of punishment you deserve.
But also built on psychology, we know that kids rebel against even good homes.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm even talking about. I'm talking about whether they've demonstrated the ability to understand. Okay, Johnny, we've taught you that there's certain things that as a society are acceptable. Certain behaviors are acceptable. And Johnny has lived his life and demonstrated he understands those and can behave accordingly. And then Johnny decides, well, fuck this. I'm going to be a jackass and I'm going to fucking do somebody harm just because whether he's rebelling or for whatever fucking... You can't micromanage that either. You know what I mean? You can't go too far into that. They've accepted it. They've demonstrated they can behave in an acceptable manner, but then they've consciously chosen to do harm or to test the system or for whatever reasons. Then you dictate their punishment accordingly to that, to how they've kind of dealt with it.
That's a very interesting thing that you say it that way, particularly that way, because I grew up in a nice home. My parents were always like, yeah, all about it. I still rebelled against them, and I tried to do stuff to get in trouble just because I was maybe attention-seeking or something like that. And then when I did get in a little bit of trouble, I was like, yeah, this is dumb. It's fucking stupid. I don't want to get in trouble. But I still was like,
no, we're going out to drink.
Yes, I like the attention. I like that part of it. But I grew up in a good home, and the punishment didn't fit the crime, I guess you should say.
I think that one of the things that you had to recognize is the severity of punishment. I think should be most of all, linked to the severity of the crime.
Yeah, shouldn't it be linked to an awareness of how you're
was built to rehabilitate theoretical criminal possibility?
What are you talking
bullshit. It was completely bullshit. Like, the punishment I went through was like...
Okay,
we're talking about not the punishment you went through. We're talking about the punishment that we're going to deal out to somebody who's actually broken society.
But let's not get sidetracked into...
Okay, sorry.
Into the broken criminal justice system that we know...
Or into personal shit. I want to do that. Yeah.
The whole reason it's broken is because it doesn't hit at the core of what motivates us. And I think that the fact that even the three of us, and I think we're all pretty open-minded, it's very difficult to get away from this idea of punishment when the primary concern should be trying to help that person if you can, right? It's very hard to move away from this guttural, vindictive,
retribution,
disgust, revenge-based system, right? Especially if it's like you brought up
especially when the emotions get involved in it.
Yeah, personal element. I mean, if someone had ever molested your daughter, Reap, I'm pretty sure you probably would have.
I'd be pretty pissed, and I know that I'm well aware, and I would probably still go with the feelings that came naturally from that type of behavior.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
But that's why that's why our criminal justice system can't be based on those personal feelings, right?
No, I think that that's a good point.
Knowledge.
Let me make a side point really quick, is to take emotion out of all this shit.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to take emotion out of anything we decide to do. We need to take emotion out of it and deal with it on a different level. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to make, like I said, the point that, like, I think what's interesting is, okay, let's just take the example of the pedophile, which is everyone just gets disgusted.
The majority of people,
yeah. Yeah, this is like the penultimate example of the lowest scum of humanity, right? What a lot of people wouldn't like to acknowledge, and which strikes me as being probably very, very true. Just like there are many people who have had moments where they really thought they would like to really hurt someone badly. I think we've all had those moments, right?
Yeah.
There are people in this world who have thought about hurting kids or doing certain things to whomever. It doesn't matter if it's pedophile or whoever it is, but they don't do it, right? These people, are they evil, or are they just, like subject to the same genes, the same environment as everybody else, right? You have to punish behaviors. And the fact that because like a lot of people like to pretend that there's the pedophiles, all pedophiles act on it. You know what I mean? There's this line between good and bad people, and that's where it is. You know what I mean? But it's very much more fuzzy than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like to admit it. It makes them very uncomfortable. But
will not admit it, you mean?
What?
Will not admit it.
It will not admit that. And what I mean is will not admit that there exists this whole host of people who have
had exactly the same thoughts but haven't acted on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
And that brings us to a whole
the grayness of the reality of the argument surrounding good and evil.
And the point of what is pedophilia or not is another whole nother subject. And we have to deal with this on a whole nother level with technology coming, because we will be able to interpret what crimes people are thinking. Thought crimes will be something we actually have to consider, which is interesting.
Well, I don't think that any society where I don't think thought crime should be.
I don't think so either, but it's going to be something that we're going to be able to tell if people are thinking about doing things wrong pretty soon.
Is that something that should be prosecuted?
I don't think so, but man, it's scary,
not.
scary shit. Because you know what? That's one of the things, like Brian brought up earlier, talking about the just hypotheticals. Is we have to figure out how we're going to deal with this shit.
Yeah, like, I mean, could a cop in like those like Minority Report future situations be like, well, what if somebody did this? Oh, you're guilty of thought crime. Like, no, I'm just saying a what if.
Because the time's coming where you're going to be able to tell what people are thinking without much trouble.
Like, could you be fucked just by being like, oh, yeah, that girl's really attractive.
I'd like to do her.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like...
And she's 16.
Like, is she going to have, like, a little digital thing above her to going, don't think about it?
No, but I'll tell you what, when you go into court and they try and decide whether you're guilty of murder or not, they're going to be able to tell the memories you have and the thoughts that you've had, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see how we deal with those kind of things.
I think that would clear up a lot of things, though, too, because I think everybody that's ever been married would be like, yeah, maybe I would
think
kill her
anybody
one
who's
day.
ever lived has had some crimes. According to the laws we have now, has probably broken several laws. And anyone who is even falsely accused of doing a crime, where you get to the point where you can actually look back into what they've thought before or the thoughts they've had, where you can use that to judge a person. And yeah, it's just very disturbing.
Like, if I ever met Mila Kunis, I'd be like, I really wish she would have sex with me right now.
Okay.
Would I be in trouble for a thought crime?
Yes, you would be, and you should be in jail right now.
Oh, damn it!
Okay. Now,
and so should pretty much every other person on the earth.
Exactly. Well, not every person on the earth would have had sex with me.
We're all locked up, just sitting beside, like, what'd you think about?
Okay, now we gotta wrap this up because this podcast isn't that long, so we've pretty much kind of wrapped up our meat of our conversation. I hate to tell you. But there's another aspect of this that I'm going to wrap this up with, and there's a guy that I had on the Angry Atheist podcast who talked about the fact that when the Big Bang happened, everything was set into motion, and that we were actually all on a, what do they call it, Brian? A video game where you don't really control where you go, but you shoot as you go along.
Oh, a rail shooter?
We're all on rail shooters.
Yeah.
We're all playing a rail shooter right now, and we really don't have any control over what we do. If I decide to pick up this beer that's sitting next to me right now and finish it off, really I don't have any choice in that. It's something that the chemicals that have already been put into place when the whole universe began, the whole thing got put into place, are already dictated and decided for me, and I really have no control over anything I'm doing. Like Brian can't control talking over me.
Yeah. You're going to pick that bottle up no matter what it is.
And it's, I think that what's really interesting there is the implication of that is that we actually don't have any free will.
Yeah.
Free will is an illusion.
Yeah.
And
is that scary to you guys?
No, not at all.
No, it kind of bothers me a little bit.
It doesn't bother me because it does, like, we have the illusion of free will, and the illusion of free will is comforting enough for me, because I think
I don't like the illusion of anything, though. That's my problem. I want to know what's really going on and what's really happening. I want to know the reality of things.
If you want to know what's really going on, I think the closest you can get to that is, and I know I have become a shameless promoter of Sam Harris in the last few months.
Kinda.
You really have to read his new book, Waking Up. I think that's the closest any human is ever going to get to actually knowing what's going on. And it's really just about not only free will, not only is free will an illusion, but the whole feeling. You know how we all kind of have that feeling that who we are is someone behind our eyes kind of looking out?
Not really.
You know what I mean? Like you have like feeling that someone's in the driver's seat, that your body is like,
exactly, that concept. Exactly what I'm talking about right now.
Yeah. So that feeling of being someone who's driving this vehicle, which is your body, he contends that, free will is an illusion. That feeling of being someone is also an illusion.
I would say I agree with that.
And that he thinks that the clearest path to wellness, psychological wellness,
play the lottery,
is being able to practice the ability to cut through that illusion through meditation or through whatever technique
But
works.
then what do you do?
What?
What do you do after that, though?
Well, all you do is
I know we're trying to wrap up. I have a lot of things I would love to say about that concept, but we have to wrap up. And I would love to continue this conversation with Terry or anybody else that wants to talk to me. But I think there's a lot of good things that can be said about that concept, because I totally understand what you're talking about. And I've thought that before, even hearing about Sam Harris's book on that.
Yeah.
Because
I'm not a big fan of Sam Harris. I like him, but I don't know if I personally like him, but I like some of his thinking. But it's not a new concept either. It's not something that Sam Harris has brought out. I mean, this is something that's been bouncing around in philosophy for a long time, and I just think that I'm glad that he's bringing it up and bringing it to the mainstream, but it's something that's been around for a long time, and I find it myself depressing.
It's very scary to people to go, I actually don't have control.
I don't find it scary as much as I find it depressing.
But see,
I don't at all. To actually acknowledge, be like, I'm not sure what I'm actually doing. I'm doing things based on.
So what's the point then?
Baby things.
And what's the point then?
It's the experience. The experience is what the point is.
There is no point. No, the experience is not even the point. I mean, why does it matter? The experience doesn't really matter.
Well, no, the experience is the subjective idea.
Exactly, subjective.
So that's what the reason is. It's for the subjective idea. It's not about anything else. It's the subjective idea. It's like, I had this experience and I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Anything else doesn't matter.
And also, too, the fact that our actions are written in a sense that they're written into the universe in that, not in a like a fate kind of way, but in a purely like a deterministic scientific kind of way. It doesn't change the fact that what we do matters in the world, in a community of.
But we're not doing it. That's the whole thing.
What?
We're not actually doing it. That's the whole point.
We're not, and that's kind of beautiful.
I suppose that's one way of looking at it.
I mean, that's how I look at the world. It's like, I haven't really made this decision. I mean, I'm doing this decision, but this is just a result of all the things before that. I look at very Matrix-y, like, I'm talking to the fucking one, or like in that room with all the TVs and shit. I'm just like, we've had 1,000 before you, and we'll have 1,000 after you.
Exactly.
Well, and I'm just okay, well, I'm doing the thing, and I like this thing.
I really think that Reap, because I'm not obviously nearly as articulate as Sam Harris, but he does address the whole issue of what's the point and all this kind of stuff in his book, and he does it so eloquently.
I don't know. I think that's something I want to find on my own.
Well, the idea is that there is no point. There literally isn't.
I already know that, but I want to find out if the point has meaning to me. Is something that I have to decide on my own, and despite how much Brian wants to talk over me.
Terry.
I just have one.
Terry,
quick,
tap in.
I think that how a lot of people say, okay, how can a Satanist have awe over the night sky when they don't believe there's any purpose, right?
Yeah.
but we can still stand, a Satanist can still stand in awe of the night sky and the universe, even though he or she knows there's no purpose, right?
Yeah,
correct?
But that's...
Okay, that's true, right?
Well,
so,
yeah, but
to me, it's the same reason why life does not lose meaning, even though we are not the conscious authors of our thoughts.
Yeah, but to think that I could drop everything that I'm doing right now and go walk in front of a train...
You're right, but do you?
Yeah. I might very well. Who knows?
And if you did...
To be honest, it wouldn't make a fucking bit of difference, would it?
No, and why?
Exactly right. That's my point. Kind of my point.
7 or 8 people that'd be really upset.
Yeah, but it wouldn't make in the scope of things, in the scope of the universe, which we've been talking about through this whole conversation, which actually the whole premise of this conversation, the scope of the universe, wouldn't give a shit.
Nope, they wouldn't give a fuck.
No.
I wouldn't care. I'd be like,
I thank you for that, but
just walked in front of a train.
I thank you for that, but it wouldn't be you caring. It would just be something that was set in motion when the Big Bang started, just like we go around in circles.
Yeah.
So I would be set in motion to be like, fuck.
I don't know. You guys are getting my point right, because I think that it's a valid point.
Well, none of it really matters. Like, the ultimate goal is none of it really fucking matters.
Yes, yeah. In the scope of things, it doesn't.
I honestly think that a lot of that, how you feel about it, says a lot about your attitude.
Are you saying my attitude sucks?
Your overall psychology, and the whole point of, like, say, doing meditation and that sort of thing, and trying to cut through the illusion of self, is to try to get a taste of what it's like, of what consciousness or what reality is like without this constant internal talking to yourself, like, where did I put my car keys? I can't believe I lost my car keys again.
Those are
put that hook up on the wall. Why don't I use the hook on the wall? You know, this constant...
I'm way past that kind of... It's deeper than that, but it's like... And I don't know how meditation is going to get me any deeper than I've thought about it already. So is the thing that... I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that I do think that's probably a good thing for people to do. But I'm saying on a personal level, that's probably... I'm a little bit past that part of it.
And it's not for everyone.
No.
And you can achieve the same mindset through other acts. Like, have you ever, like, when you're one of the examples. This is the last thing I'm going to say before the end of the show.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in a situation where you've been enjoying what you're doing so much that you just completely lose yourself in it, like almost like you lose time in the sense that you're working so hard that all of a sudden you realize you've been doing this for the last, say, 3 or 4 minutes, and
perception
you
of time,
haven't had a thought go through your mind hardly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That pure stream of consciousness where you haven't really been thinking, that is a very similar, if not the same sort of state, right?
Yeah. So everyone enjoy a blowjob.
So meditation is a way of training yourself to be able to induce that feeling without having see that particular activity involved, right? It's about focusing your attention.
I think there's value to that statement. And Brian, I told you no dick jokes.
I didn't make one.
Brian, what's a blowjob?
I have no idea.
Okay, then I'll let the dick joke pass. Then I want to thank you guys for coming out and hanging out with me.
I should not get.
And if you want to hear more from the three of us, then you can hear the Reapso Radio, where Terry Sacre and Brian Allen are my co-hosts, and that's why I've invited them to have this conversation. I want to thank you for listening, and there'll be more Modern Satanism after after this. Okay.
Come on, that was good.
So here comes Satanism.
Satan! 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 Satan!
Okay, now, let's listen to this.
Welcome to Revelation Unraveled.
Revelation Unraveled.
See, I am already getting in the Christmas
spirit.
Lights
on it. Okay.
Every year here in Forestport, we have a electric light Christmas parade.
Ooh.
So as you can see, I am all
electric light
ready.
From the devil.
However, I am going to hang that up because I wanted to talk about
his
something
hat is hanging without a hook.
Serious.
Satanic.
And that is that just about every year at this time of season, the United States Post Office likes to mess with our minds.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think somewhere in those hallowed halls, the Antichrist is lurking.
I'm sure he is.
In any case, this is the flyer they sent out this year. It's called
your 2014 holiday.
Your 2014 Holiday Playbook. I thought we could look at what they are offering. And they have 6 different plays in here.
6.
Play number 1, the holiday handoff.
That's satanic.
Play number 2,
oh, wait.
the stick and send. Play number 3, the picker-upper.
Ooh.
Play number 4,
yes.
the informer.
Ooh.
Play number 5, the game saver.
Ooh.
Play number 6. Uh-oh. 6 is the number of the Antichrist.
Oh, shit.
Maybe we should take a closer look at that one.
We should.
The mailbox miracle.
Oh.
Well, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
You hardly ever find a religious term in a United States Post Office mail flyer for the Christmas season.
US Postal Service.
The mailbox miracle. And number 7 is the crunch time calendar.
Okay.
Let's take a closer look at this mailbox miracle.
Okay, yes, do that.
Play number 6.
Yeah, you covered that already.
Number 6 is the number for the Antichrist.
Don't we know it?
If you'll notice, there are 6 snowflakes.
There are 6 snowflakes.
And each snowflake has 6 points.
Oh, my God.
And the number 23 is also found on this particular play.
Not the number 23.
Let's take a closer look.
Okay, let's do that.
On the play number 6 page, the mailbox
Were
miracle.
They supposed to skip number 6?
We see 6 snowflakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And no 2 snowflakes are alike, too.
Each snowflake has 6 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
They're kind of circles, though.
That gives us 6, 6,
And
6.
wait a minute.
Now let's take a closer look at these 24 lights
bulbs
around the mailbox. Of these 24 lights, please notice that
they have little lines
only
coming off
one
lit up.
is not
one
lit.
Doesn't.
That gives us 23 lighted lights.
I knew that post office was that.
This is not accidental.
I'm sure it's not.
And of course, you, my subscribers, are well aware.
I'm not a subscriber, but I know.
Number 23 is another number for the Antichrist.
Yeah, but
and
why?
of course, that's because 2 comes before 3.
Of course it does.
In other words, man comes before God. And that is the whole essence of the Antichrist.
I'm losing you a little bit here, buddy. You all right?
System. So I guess the holiday playbook is just a little questionable again this year.
It is. It is questionable, and we kind of lost him there a little at the end, didn't I? You know what's really odd is he posted this on November 23rd. Published on November 23rd. You know what that means? 2 comes before 3. 2 comes before 3. Do I have to say any more than that? We've got the post office. We've got the word miracle. We have 24 light bulbs. 23 of them lit up. That's the connection. Glad I could help you with this. I want to thank the dude that hosts this, whatever his name is, because he's a very reliable source of, I don't know what you call it. I'm not going to call it information. Stuff. A reliable source for stuff. That's funny. Oh, he's actually, wait, in the comments, he's actually, that light out is exactly across from the words United States. And he replies, excellent observation. Hey, wait a minute. All the words are spelled with letters. Excellent observation. Excellent. Now, I hope you've all learned something and you're a little bit better at finding out what's going on with the Antichrist because he works in mysterious ways and now using the post office. Beware. You might want to keep it on your mailman. He's up to something.
Hello.
Who are you?
An angel.
What's your name?
Satan. Uh-oh. What's the matter?
Nothing.
One should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego your own. Beliefs should conform to our best scientific understanding of the world. We should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit our beliefs. People are fallible. If we make a mistake, we should do our best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
So there you go. There's the Satanic Temple tenets to wrap up the show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Terry and Brian, Terry Sacre and Brian Allen, who you can find on Facebook, or you can also listen to the three of us along with Kara, I don't know what her name is, on Reapso Radio. You can find Reapso Radio at reapsoradio.com. It's another show I've been doing for about 7 years, so I don't think I've mentioned it before, so now you know one of my secrets. Thank you for listening. If you feel like you would like to support the podcast, you're more than welcome to do so on the modernsatanism.net podcast. And if you would please share the podcast with people, that doesn't cost anything. All you gotta do is click the mouse a couple more times. And what's a couple more times with the number of times you've probably already clicked it before now? So I'm not asking much, am I? Make sure you go to the Satanic Temple website and check out what's going on. Support them as much as possible. And also spread the word. It's not gonna hurt anybody if you talk about Satanism. Satanism never hurt anybody. Just got blamed for hurting people. Oh, and as a reminder, I'm going to be on the Trust Reason podcast, which you can find at fairfaxradio.com. I want to thank Eric again for having me on his show. And hopefully you'll hear me on Deferred Gnosis pretty soon. And I know you've been listening to the Deferred Gnosis podcast, right? Because I talked about it last week. So you're still listening to that. So keep an eye out for that. That'll probably be a little bit, but yeah, I'll let you know when it happens. And Christmas time's coming up, so make sure you get up those satanic Christmas displays. Get them going. Get to work on that. Satanism is depending on you. Because we got this war against Christmas to fight, you know. This imaginary war on Christmas. So, yeah, start with that. And then, is there anything else I needed to tell you? I don't think I needed to tell you anything. I hope you're enjoying the music you're listening to. And just because it's a happy little tune, don't get the wrong idea. Okay? Hail Satan. See you next podcast.